Hi guys. So I'm going to be leading you through an hour-long yin practice. Yin is a really great way to wind down after your regular exercise routine or even just at night when you're getting ready to go to bed and you need to stretch into the body and start to access a little bit more of the connective tissue in the body. These are long held, low to the ground, supported stretches. So, using things like yoga blocks, blankets, or anything you have at home to prop yourself up, regular rolled up blankets work really well. Or couch cushions, pillows from your bed, anything at all, just to help you kind of bring the ground up to you so you're not going down quite as deep. The target sensation for these stretches is to try to find that threshold of the stretch and then dial it back a bunch. We're going to be holding these poses for an extended amount of time. So we want to make sure that we're not holding the most intense stretch that you've ever felt for 5 minutes. We want this to be gentle amounts of sensation. And if we start the stretch in a place where it's a little bit gentler, it's going to increase over the amount of time that we'll be holding the poses. So keep it gentle, keep it soft, and honor your body. All right, we'll get started. Our first stretch is going to target getting into the ankles and the shin area. So you're just going to come to kneeling. Toes are going to be untucked underneath you, so the tops of the feet are pressing down into the mat. Knees can come close together, and then you're just going to sit back onto the heels. Now, if this is uncomfortable for you, just having this amount of weight back onto the ankles, a nice way to just provide a little bit of support is to take a blanket, roll up one end, maybe halfway, so we've got a little bit of a little bit of a burrito here to place underneath the ankles. And then right at the front of the ankle joint, that's where you're going to place that rolled blanket. And this just helps to alleviate some of the angle of the stretch, and we're not applying quite as much pressure down onto the front of that joint. Knees again are going to come close together, just sitting up tall here. And if the heels want to roll out a little bit, that's okay. They can kind of roll out towards maybe the sits bones in the back there. Toes can angle in slightly. And just taking a couple of nice deep breaths. If at any point this becomes too intense and you need to give yourself a break, you can always just come up to kneeling. Flex into the feet a couple of times, maybe roll the ankles out, and then rejoin when you're ready. This is a nice way to start to open up the front line of the lower leg. Open up into that ankle joint. And in our yin practice, we want to just let the breath stay slow and natural. Stay a little bit lifted through the heart here. And shoulders will relax down the back. This can be a nice time just to close the eyes. And really just allow yourself to be in the body, be in the sensations that you're feeling here. Allow yourself to breathe into the sensations. Moving towards deeper relaxation. And deeper understanding of what you're feeling in your body. We'll be here for just one more minute. If you have that rolled blanket underneath the fronts of your ankles and you want to increase the sensation at this point, you can unroll it all the way or even just a little bit and see how that feels. See if you can get a little bit deeper into the fronts of the ankles. And again, keeping the heart lifted, shoulders heavy, and the breath slow. helping to draw yourself deeper into the experience of your body. And finding a little bit of stillness there. And then go ahead and shift yourself forward. You can come into tabletop to come out of this. And then just a really nice counter pose is maybe tucking the toes under on one leg, pressing back through that heel. Just a nice stretch through the calf and some good dorsiflexion of the ankle. And then you can take that on the other leg, just tucking the toes under, pressing back through the heel. This will help to open up the knee joint again as well. And go ahead and release that. Maybe rolling the ankles out a little bit. You can tap the tops of the feet, sort of increase blood flow down there, get some sharper sensations. And then from there, go ahead and transition to seated. And we're going to come into our butterfly pose. So soles of the feet come together, knees drop open wide. Now if you feel yourself rounding backwards, being pulled backwards by maybe a tight lower back, it can really help to place a cushion or blanket underneath you just so that you're lifting the pelvis up a little bit higher, and maybe you can stay sitting up taller from here. Stack yourself up as high as you need to go. If you have issues with sciatica, it can help to stack yourself up high enough so that the knees are underneath the hip line. So if that means you need to add yoga blocks to really get tall there, go ahead and do it. Just be gentle on that low back. If you don't have low back issues, you can sit flat on the floor or maybe just on one cushion. There's a couple options for holding this pose. You can either pull the feet in a little bit closer and even interlacing fingers and just locking the toes in place there. And this is going to give you a little bit more stretch into the adductors, so getting to those inner thighs. If that's not the stretch you're looking for, you can move the feet a little bit further away from you. And this is just going to be more about finding that nice rotation into the hip. You might start to feel it a little bit in the hamstrings. Wherever you are, whether those feet are in close or a little bit further away, make sure that you're sitting up tall here and just try to relax into the outer hips. Relax around the hip joint. And as you feel comfortable in this pose, as things start to open up, if you want to add in a little bit of a forward fold here, again, just make sure you're trying to eliminate as much rounding in the low back as possible. So we want to think about pulling the low ribs forward. And you can fold in if you have the heels closer towards your body, and this will just get deeper into those adductors. And with the feet a little bit further away as you fold in, you might start to feel this a little bit more into the hamstrings, like I said. And you decide where you go and how deep you get. As the body starts to relax a little bit more, if you're sitting on something and you feel like you want to come off of it, especially if the low back and the hamstrings are starting to open, you can remove your prop. If you want to place a block or pillow on the feet to rest the forehead on, if you have the feet a little bit further away from the pelvis, you can do that. If you have the feet closer towards the pelvis, you can bring a block in front of the feet to rest the forehead down, if you can get that low. It just depends on your level of flexibility. And again, really aiming to find that threshold of the deep stretch and back off a little bit so that it's more subtle. And continuing to tune into the breath. Tune into whatever sensations are present wherever you ended up. We'll be here for one more minute. If you feel like you want to switch up the pose, maybe moving the feet closer or further away from you, you're welcome to explore that. See if it feels better. See if it feels different. We'll take just a couple more breaths. Relaxing through the shoulders, relaxing through the upper back. And then go ahead and sit up if you folded forward at all. Nice counter pose to this forward folded hip opening is to just lean back onto the hands. Step the feet a little bit wider than hip distance and rock the knees side to side. So we're bringing one leg into a little bit of that internal rotation to counterpose the external rotation of our butterfly. Just nice slow movements. If it feels good to kind of pause with one leg coming in towards center, you can pause. Good, and then bringing the legs back to center. So the next pose, we're going to do a half butterfly, but we're going to explore two different variations of it. So first variation, we'll take a bend into the right knee. Left leg will come straight out to the side, a little bit wider. We want to try to get the sole of the foot to the inner thigh. If it doesn't quite get there, that's totally fine. It also doesn't have to be as high up on the leg. It can certainly be lower down if that's more comfortable. A little bit of engaging in that left leg just to find a little bit of extra length down the back side of it. So we're working these front leg muscles just to encourage lengthening through the back of the leg. And then turning the heart towards that left leg, allow yourself just to fold in. And we'll start right here. If you don't fold in this far, that's fine. Maybe you're up here. And maybe it just feels best to lean back onto the fingertips if you're already feeling a stretch in the back line of that leg. And again, really trying to keep that rounding out of the low back as much as possible. As you start to drop the belly down on top of that left thigh, there is going to be rounding. I'm just starting here for a moment and feeling what this is like. And from here, you can begin to reach the opposite arm. So you'll take your right arm towards the outer edge of that left foot or left leg. Now I have my pinky up and my thumb down, so there's a little bit of rotation in that shoulder, and this should start to create a stretch down your right side body. And maybe this is enough of a side stretch for you and you stay right here. If you want to explore a little bit deeper of a side stretch or just a different way of finding a side stretch, you'll start to bring your left arm, so same side arm, to the inner left leg. And then from there, rotate the right arm up towards the ceiling. So we're rotating the right shoulder, opening. You can press the left arm into the left leg to create a little bit of leverage to find that lift of the heart. And staying here if this feels good. Try to stay grounded through both sides of the pelvis. And for one more variation to come into a side stretch, we're going to rotate the right leg into more of a half hero's pose. So that heel, the right heel, is going to come towards the outer line of the right hip. Now we can let this knee kind of scoot out wide here. And then from there, exploring the side stretch. And maybe from here you can work the left shoulder to the inner left leg. Maybe you can reach the left foot with the right hand. And you can see I just bring my left arm in front of me, or it can certainly reach up towards that foot. So just finding whatever variation of a side stretch feels good and holding it. We've got less than a minute here. Relaxing the breath. Just a few more moments, just breathing, feeling the body. And then wherever you ended up, go ahead and lift yourself back up to center. You can bring both legs in front, and then just nice and easy, simple side to side twists. Just taking a minute to undo that side stretch. And then we'll come into that stretch on the other side. So right leg's going to be straight, starting slow here. So sole of the left foot to the inner right thigh. Just rotating that leg open. Again, this foot can be positioned away from the leg or further down the leg depending on your comfort level. And then turning the heart to shoot straight over that right leg. Fold in any amount here. So just starting to feel through the back line of the right leg. We've got a little bit of engaging, so flexing the foot gently. I'm trying to keep as much rounding out of the low back as possible. And again, if that means you're sitting up tall and not much else, that's okay. And then from here, we can start to explore a little bit more length down the side body. So you're going to reach your left arm towards the outer edge of that right leg, so opposite arm. And again, I bring my thumb down and my pinky up as I reach, especially if you're grabbing the outer edge of the foot. And this is going to start to stretch through that left shoulder blade, getting down into the left side body. And just pause with that nice stretch for a moment, couple of breaths here. And certainly if this is enough of a stretch for you, you stop here. If you want a little bit more, you can bring the right arm to the inside of the right leg and start to reach the left arm up towards the ceiling. Roll the left shoulder open. Pausing here, and you can kind of use the right arm on the inside of the leg as leverage to rotate open through the chest. Really getting into that left side. When we're here, we want to make sure we're rooting down into the left sits bone, and we're keeping that right leg slightly active. And for a little bit more, just a different variation of a side stretch, we're going to start to rotate that left leg into more of a half hero's pose. So toes are untucked and the top of the foot is pressing into the mat. The heel's coming towards the outer hip, and then we can angle the knee out a little bit. So right leg hasn't moved. Right arm stays towards the inner edge of the right leg, and I can press into it to rotate the heart up. And then the left arm reaches up overhead, and maybe you can grab a hold of the foot from this position, bringing the right arm in front of you, or just reaching towards the foot and rolling the chest open. whatever side stretch variation is going to feel best for you on this side. And maybe you stick with that first variation, and that's totally fine. We've got less than a minute here. Continuing to focus on the breath and that release of the body with the breath. And then go ahead and sit up nice and tall wherever you ended up. Once again, we can bring both legs straight out in front and just really gently side to side twisting. And just unwinding the spine, releasing into the side bodies. Good, and bringing yourself back to center. We're going to shift onto hands and knees. If you need a little bit of padding underneath your knees, especially if you're on a harder surface, a folded blanket can be really nice here. So we're going to keep the toes tucked under this time. Feet are going to be about hip distance apart, maybe a little bit less. Knees come together in front of you, and then we sit back onto the heels with the toes tucked. And you can kind of reach down, grab the toes, pull them forward. Again, heels can roll open here. And feel free to lift up out of this whenever you need to take a break on the toes. We want subtle sensation, and that might mean that you lift up and sit back down quite a few times. We won't be holding this for as long as the other poses. But this helps to really open up through the soles of the feet here. So this is called our toe squat. Some people refer to this, especially in vinyasa classes, as broken toe pose. And just breathing with the sensation that you feel. It can start to become intense really quickly. Notice how you respond to that. And give yourself a break when you need it. We breathe with the intensity. We'll be here for just 30 more seconds. Try to breathe down into the belly. Breathe out into the ribs. Notice where you feel this. Allow yourself to sit with that. Good, then go ahead and shift your weight forward, just coming back to tabletop. Untuck the toes, and then just tap the tops of the feet really lightly against the floor or your yoga mat. Good, you can wiggle the toes around, circle into the ankles. And then coming into actually a nice counter pose to our toe squat, just a child's pose. If you want to give yourself a little bit more support in your child's pose, you can take 2 yoga blocks and stack them short end to short end, and then place a blanket on top of them. Or if you have a bolster, you can bring a bolster right here instead of these props. Pull them in towards the inner thighs. We're going to have the knees about yoga mat distance apart, which is wider than hip distance. Big toe tips will touch behind you, so knees angle out, feet angle in. And then rest the chest, making sure you're getting the sternum right on the bolster or the blocks and blankets. You're giving yourself a little bit more support. And then from there, the head can rest down. Arms can either be by your sides, especially if you have issues with your rotator cuff and reaching up overhead. If it's comfortable for you, arms can always reach forward. Just make sure that you can relax the forearms down into the floor, relax the shoulders. Just let the whole body be supported here. The hips stay resting towards the heels as close as they can comfortably get. And if you prefer to take just a traditional child's pose, you don't need to have any props underneath you at all. You can always just bring your chest and your forehead down to the floor or down to your yoga mat. And just getting really quiet, really still in the body. And with just a little bit of compression in the front body, see if you can move the breath into the low back. Try to notice that subtle movement of the spine with the inhales and the exhales. The expansion of the back ribs. Softening just a little bit more with every breath. And if you rested your head on one side, you can switch to the other side just to make sure you're even. And if you want to transition off of the props, you can always transition off of the props. I won't be transferring my head to the other side so that I don't hit the microphone. Try to really focus on the stillness that we can find, especially in some of these more relaxing poses. We can let go of effort. We can let go of engaging muscles, tensing areas of the body. And really try to actively relax every part of the body. We've got less than a minute here. And then go ahead and start to walk the hands back in towards the knees. You can slide your props out of the way. And from here, coming out of this, maybe taking tabletop, same thing we did before. Maybe you tuck the toes under, press back through one heel and then the other. Also a really nice way to come out of this is just taking a down dog for a moment. So if that's comfortable for you, you can lift the hips up towards the ceiling, maybe pedal out the feet a couple of times, sway the hips a little. It's a nice way to just open up through both knees and flex into the ankles. And then as you're ready, we'll return to tabletop. So we're going to continue with some kneeling poses. If you need a blanket underneath the knees for a little bit of extra padding, please use it. If you have yoga blocks, you can grab those. Even just one will help. Or any kind of object that's going to help lift the ground up a little bit higher to give yourself some space. We're going to come into some lunging. So we're going to step the right foot towards the top of the yoga mat or between your hands here, keeping that left knee down, toes untucked on that left leg. And we want to land with the right knee above the right ankle. Blocks can help give you a little bit of space, a little bit of lift of the torso so you're not sinking down as much into that left hip flexor. So we're really trying to get into the iliopsoas on this left side. And relax down. This one will start to get intense pretty quickly here. So try to breathe through it, especially if you're doing a lot of sitting lately. And we're going to take a couple variations of this lunge. This is just our first one. If you have longer limbs like me and you have yoga blocks, you can prop them up a little bit higher and maybe even get your forearms onto them so that you can release the upper body a little bit more. I even lean my chest onto that right thigh. And if that's not comfortable, just keep yourself lifted up onto your hands. And then we're going to find a little transition. So pressing back into the hands, we're just going to heel toe that right foot towards the right edge of the mat so that both hands are now to the inside of the right leg. The knee is going to stay above the ankle here. And maybe as we come into more of this lizard lunge variation of our dragon pose, which is what we call it in Yin, you can stay on hands. You can come down to forearms on any surface that's going to make it a little bit more accessible to you. If you have the range of motion to bring the forearms all the way down to the floor, that's totally fine too. You decide how deep you get into this pose. It's a little bit of rotation into this right hip. You can let the knee sort of sway out. It helps to even turn the toes out just slightly, not too extreme. And again, we're really trying to get a nice stretch into the front of that left hip. So getting into those hip flexors from all of the sitting. And as you relax into this, if it starts to become too intense, just back out of it a little bit. Return to the hands, come back up onto your props. You decide the amount of intensity that you feel here, and we want to make sure that it's sustainable for the amount of time that we're holding these poses. We're going to take just a couple more breaths here. And then if you're not already on your hands, go ahead and press back up. We're going to keep the right foot where it is and just pull the hips back. Now you can walk the hands back so the wrists stay under the shoulders, coming into sort of a wide half splits here. So this will relieve some of the tension on the front of that left hip as we start to flex into it and give us a little stretch into the back line of that right leg. We'll just be here for 30 more seconds. And then from here, pressing into the hands, let's bring the right knee back next to the left. Any kind of movements, poses, or shapes you need to make to come out of that, go ahead and take it. Maybe you need to roll around in the hips. Maybe a down dog would feel good. Maybe a couple of rounds of cat-cow. Take time just to explore and release your body from that lunge. And then when you're ready, we'll just take that on the other side. So starting with that first dragon lunge, stepping the left foot between the hands here, landing with that left knee right above the left ankle, right knee stays down, toes untucked here. Using props if you need them, just to give yourself a little bit more space and a little bit more support so we're not just sinking down into the pelvis or sinking into this left hip. And you decide the level of sensation, your comfort level, so that this becomes a sustainable position to hold. I'm trying to relax wherever you can relax. There will be a little bit more tension in the body as we hold these lunges, but where can you start to let go? What doesn't need to be tense? And how can you use the breath to create that nice movement towards relaxation? And then from here, we're going to transition into that wider lunge. So heel toe the left foot towards the left edge of your mat so that both hands are to the inside of that leg now. You can stay on props here, aiming to get a nice sensation, sustainable sensation in the front of that right hip. You might start to feel some rotation into this left hip. That's awesome. If you want to turn the left toes out a little bit, rotate the left kneecap out a little bit. If that creates more comfort, go ahead and do it. And if you want to come down to forearms, either onto props or all the way down to the floor, if that's comfortable for you, you just find the amount of sensation that's going to be healthy for your body to hold for a while. And we'll be here for one more minute. If it starts to become too intense, pull out of it a little bit. Press back into your hands. Come onto props. Do whatever you have to do so that the body is not creating more tension in this stress, but it's helping to relieve tension. then if you came down to forearms, go ahead and press back up to your hands. The left foot's going to stay where it is, and we're going to pull the hips back into that wide half split shape. So gentle flexion in that left foot. We want to try to land with the right hip above the right knee. Just stretching into the back line of that left leg and relieving some of that tension in the front of the right hip. And holding this just for 30 more seconds. And then pressing into the hands, let's bring the left knee back next to the right, returning to tabletop, and again, taking any kind of poses, stretches, movements that are going to feel good to come out of that lunge series. And maybe that means you take a down dog, wiggle it out a little bit. And when you're ready, we're going to transition back to seated here. And if you were sitting on any props, go ahead and slide them out of the way. So we're going to come into our cattail pose. Just starting from a seated position, you're going to roll over onto your right hip and then lean onto your right forearm. So we're just coming onto our side here. Make sure that this is comfortable for your shoulder, and I'll give you an option if it's not to come a little bit lower. We're going to kick our left leg straight out in front of us, and it can just kind of rest there. Reach down with your left hand, see if you can grab your right foot, knee is bent, and then slide that knee away from you. You can pull the heel in towards your body. This is a nice stretch for that right quad. If this is becoming uncomfortable for your right shoulder, you can always lower down and just rest the head in the hand. This might intensify that stretch on the right quad though. And just pulling the heel in towards the body. The more you press the knee away from your body, the deeper the stretch. And as things start to let go and open up here, if you have the range of motion, you can start to reach the right arm forward, so same direction as the left leg, and then roll your upper back flat against the floor. So we want to try to aim to get that left shoulder flat on the floor. And if it makes it a little bit easier, you can try bending the left knee and just kind of support it with the right hand. So we're opening up into more of a reclined position here, but still getting that stretch along the right quad. I'm taking just a couple more breaths here. And then from there, go ahead and release that right foot straight forward. You can press back in towards a tabletop, especially if you rolled all the way onto your back. Might feel nice just to do a couple rounds of cat-cow. Any kind of movements or shapes that you need to take to come out of that, go ahead and explore them. And as you're ready, we'll just return to that seated position and taking that on the other side. So rolling over onto the left hip, leaning onto the left forearm, starting there. Right leg's going to kick straight forward. We're going to reach down with the right hand and see if we can grab that left foot and then slide the knee away from you. So we're pulling the heel in towards the booty and the knees pressing towards the other side of the yoga mat. Staying here if this feels like enough. If you feel tension, especially in that left shoulder, you can start to lower yourself down and maybe just rest the head in the hand. And then as the body again starts to relax into this a little bit more, if you want more sensation, you can start to reach that left arm, same direction as the straight leg, and just kind of roll yourself onto your back. It's going to intensify the stretch on that left quad, and if it's easier, maybe you just bend the right knee, rest the left hand, kind of anchor it in place there on top of the knee. And we're trying to roll the right shoulder down into the floor, so down into the mat. Just notice where you feel this. Notice what sensations are present. And how can you breathe into them? How can you relax a little bit? And we'll take just a couple more breaths. And then to release out of this, let go of that left leg. You can roll onto your side, press up, maybe just coming to seated this time, maybe taking a tabletop. Might be nice to lean back on the hands and just rock the knees side to side. Might feel really good to just twist side to side a couple of times. And it might feel good to bring yourself into a reverse tabletop. So a little lift of the heart, some stretches into the fronts of the shoulders. And if this feels like too much work for you right now, go ahead and just stay seated. Good, and then as we are ready, we're going to come into caterpillar. So it's just our regular seated forward fold, both legs straight out in front. If you feel, again, tension or rounding in the low back or like you're being pulled backwards, it might help just to place a pillow or a blanket or some kind of support underneath you so your hips are a little bit higher. And that's going to lessen this angle at the hip joint. We want to try to keep as much rounding out of the low back as possible. Feet are going to be gently flexed here. This is our first variation, so you can just fold forward over the legs, let yourself hang out, knees straight. If they bend a little bit, that's okay. If you want a little bit more support in this forward fold, you can take a blanket, roll it up, place it underneath the knees, so we're creating that bend in the knees. The legs can be a little bit further apart, just a couple of inches, and then maybe you fold forward from there, and you might get a little bit closer towards resting on the thighs. Maybe you don't. Sometimes I like to just grab opposite elbows and rest my forehead down. If you need even more lift with the knees, you can also grab yoga blocks. Stack them as high as you need them to go. You can give yourself a nice squishy surface on top of them. And then place that underneath the knees. So we have even more of a bend in the knee here. And then let yourself drape forward. So really it's about kind of letting go of the upper body, finding that really nice compression in the front body, but relaxing into it, giving yourself the ability to breathe here, to let go. We want to try to avoid that automatic reflex of wanting to grab the feet and pull ourselves into it. Can you just let yourself kind of drape forward? Let go of any muscular tension here. And allow yourself just to be wherever your body found that's comfortable, that's sustainable. Doesn't have to be an intense stretch. It can be subtle. And try to relax into the shoulders. Just let the arms hang. Let the head hang down. And again, as we compress the front body, move the breath into the back body. Can you feel your inhale in the low back? Can you feel your inhale into the back of the ribs? Maybe between the shoulder blades. Can you feel your heartbeat start to slow down? Feel your breath start to lengthen out. Maybe as you hold this and the body starts to open up, you want to get a little bit deeper. You can shift the props to a lower setting or maybe remove them altogether. And just let yourself find that space of sustainability, that space of comfort and ease. And then go ahead and sit up nice and tall. You can slide any props you have out of the way. We're going to move right into Shavasana from here. And maybe you want to keep props underneath the backs of the knees, just for a little bit of low back support. Let's take a moment, nice and slowly lower yourself down onto your back. And finding a comfortable position. Arms will go by your sides, palms turned up towards the ceiling. If you feel any kind of aching in the low back or sharp twinging just from that held forward fold, it might be helpful to bend the knees, bring the feet onto the mat, and then just kind of scoop your tailbone down a little bit. So we're lengthening into that low back, pulling the belly in, just compressing through the core, and then releasing and compressing and releasing. So we're finding that nice gentle rocking of the pelvis for a moment before we straighten the legs and try to ask those low back muscles to relax. If you need to rock the knees side to side, sometimes that can help. And as you feel ready, return the legs forward, whether they're flat on the mat or propped up by the knees. Relax through the shoulders. Relax through the back body. finding this last moment of stillness just to feel what has shifted, what has moved in the body. How has the breath and the heartbeat responded to this practice? What sensations do you feel lingering? And from these sensations, from this exploration of the body, what are you more in tune with? What are you more connected to? What can we learn about ourselves with every yoga pose that we take? Whatever kind of practice we have. And if you want to remain longer in Shavasana, you can stop the video, stay here for as long as you need to. For those who are ready to come out, just take gentle movements in the fingers, gentle movements into the toes. A couple of nice deep inhales, maybe sighing the exhales out through the mouth. Just allowing yourself a little bit of time to reawaken and prepare for movement. And as you feel ready, bend the knees, roll over onto your right side, and pause there for just a moment. And then continuing into the hands, go ahead and press yourself up to a comfortable seated position for just a moment here. Avoiding your props if you have them set up. And keeping the eyes closed, and just take a moment, sit up tall and just feel your body. Feel your breath move through it. Notice your energy levels. Notice where your awareness automatically moves to. Let's draw the awareness into the heart center. You can bring the hands together to touch in front of your heart. And then bow your head in towards the hands. Always taking one moment, one final moment of your practice to close it with gratitude. And lift the chin. Bring the thumbs towards the third eye space. Thank you guys at home for practicing with me. I hope the rest of your day or evening is wonderful and nourishing. Namaste.